Hello everybody and welcome back to Creativity in Progress. This is episode 8. If you're listening to this on Spotify or on Apple, then this will be no different, but if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that I'm obviously not on camera again this week. I'm having just a few days where I don't feel good, and I think a lot of us can relate to having moments where we just don't feel our best, and my skin's flared up. I'm really just not feeling myself, and I could go and put a full face makeup on and sit on camera, but I wouldn't feel comfortable, and I feel like I can have a much more candid chat off camera sometimes. So I don't want to let you guys down, because I know this podcast has become a thing that we do on a Monday and it gets released on a Monday, and I think old me would have been like, I don't feel good, so I'm not going to do it this week. And then as soon as I get into the cycle of that, then that's when things start to drop, and that's when I start to I'm not consistent. Whereas obviously with this, I really, really want to stay consistent. And sometimes that means I won't be putting myself on camera if I've got a low mental health week, or I'm just feeling a bit anxious, the skin's flared up, I'm just not feeling good. So that's where I'm at. That's why I'm not on camera. But I still want to obviously have this conversation with you guys today. And the thing that I want to talk about is building routines, because I think it's something that a lot of us as creatives tend to, I say tend to rebel against, but I think this is my personal experience. I wanted to rebel against routine for so long. As you guys know, I come from a very, very corporate background, and it is steeped in routine, it's steeped in structure, it's steeped in having quite a strict childhood, and obviously going into the workplace, going to work for a certain time, going to uni lectures, everything like that. When I started this business, I was like, oh, there's so much freedom, and that seems so amazing. However, I want to talk to you guys today about why I believe it is quite important to have a routine. Now, I think a lot of us, when we think about, if you're anything like me, when I think about routine, I think about, having a morning routine, having an evening routine, going to work a 9 to 5, all of this. That's not true. And I want to kind of flip the narrative on that. And that's the conversation that I want to have today. We need to learn that routines don't have to be like just the 9 to 5 job. You need to know what works for you. So you go online sometimes, you go on social media, and you might see, okay, some people like to get up at 5 a.m. and go and do a gym workout, and they lay out their clothes on the side or by their bed. They get up, they get dressed, they've got the same things they do each day. They go to the gym, they come back, they start their work, all the rest of it. But personally, for me, as much as I would love to be a morning person and do that really, really doesn't work for me. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think we live sometimes in a toxic narrative and quite in a cycle where we see things online that we should be doing things, or we should have achieved certain things. But you kind of need to work out what suits you. Just to give you an example, for me, I wouldn't say I'm a morning person. Well, I'm also not a morning person. I tend to get up probably about 6:30 most mornings, just because that's the time when I actually wake up. Charlie gets up. I tend to never really set an alarm, but I have things in place on a daily basis and on a weekly basis that ensure that I keep on top of everything. And that's the routine that I want to talk to you about today. It's not about having severe structure or extreme structure or having a 9 to 5, but it's just about having those little micro habits in place that ensure you stay consistent. And as we always say, consistency is key. And I feel like the more you learn about yourself, the more you can formulate routines to suit you. So as I just said, I don't tend to be a morning person, really. I'm not the sort of person that can get up and go straight to the gym. I much prefer going in the evening when I've eaten, I've got a whole day's worth pretty much of food. I can go and fuel a workout. I can lift as heavy as I need to lift, or as I want to lift for that session. And that's what works for me. I tend to do my drawing during daylight hours. So in winter, I have a lot less drawing time than I do in summer. But again, I don't tend to go, okay, I'm going to work Monday to Friday, because my brain literally can't function like that. I don't do well off structure, or knowing that I have a deadline to complete. I will sort of loosely set a deadline around roughly when I want to get a piece finished, but I'm very, very detached from it. That is the way that I kind of operate, and I run my business a lot of the time. I really, really struggle with structure and routine, like strict structure and routine, and that's something that I've come to accept about myself, that I'm not going to be the sort of person that can get up, jump out of bed, go to the gym, and feel super accomplished. I much prefer keeping myself super, super self-regulated. And I feel like as creatives, I think a lot of us will be able to relate to this. So find routines that suit you. And to add to that, I want to talk about habit forming, because it's that habit, those little habits that we do on a day-to-day basis, which create your life. You are your habits. So focus on making those things positive. So for me, when I was in my early 20s, my life looked very, very different to how it does now. I was obviously living with my parents. I used to go out and party a lot. I used to go and drink a lot. I was a typical sort of like, well, I guess that was when I was in my teens really, but not so much when I was in my 20s, because I was struggling quite badly with mental health and being on antidepressants and things like that. But again, I'd go to a lot of parties. I'd rebel against my parents quite a lot. I think that's the kind of normal for teenagers. And yeah, I very much just had a very, very different life. I wouldn't say I had an eating disorder, but I'd binge eat, and then I'd restrict for days and days and days on end. And then I was really quite triggered by food. And I still, something that, again, I don't really speak about, but it's still something that gets to me now a little bit. But again, I've now formulated a very safe, controlled life that I know myself so well. And again, it's come at a bit of a detriment to other things, because I am so structured in certain things, but it's the structure around keeping myself safe, and that is the routine that I want to talk about. It's that self-regulating, nurturing routine that help us stay consistent. So yeah, our habits create our life, and so for me, I like to really do things now. Like I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't take drugs, I don't do anything like that. I'm very, very, I like my home comforts. I like to find things that regulate my moods aside from creativity, because I feel like a lot of the time, and I speak about it a lot, when you come from a background of mental health and anxiety and struggling with things like that, a lot of the time we tend to go into our art and we want to sit down and we want to draw, but sometimes doing that can add and exacerbate that anxiety if we're not getting a piece right, if we're struggling with the technique, if we're struggling to make a piece look how we want it to look. Sometimes it can feel like everything's falling apart, and the one thing you love more than anything in the world, obviously drawing or painting or whatever sort of form of creativity you love, that can also feel like it's against you. So sometimes putting all our eggs in one basket in terms of our happiness and using art to regulate our moods, it's just too much. It's too much pressure on that one thing that brings you so much joy. So my idea that I want to bring to you today is to try and just relieve some of that pressure and become a little bit more almost like more playful, slightly more detached, a little bit more curious around your artwork, not really taking it quote unquote too seriously. And I say this as someone who has been a full-time artist now for 7 or 8 years, but I can tell you that I don't tend to, well, in my head, other people who know me will tell you completely differently, but in my head I don't think I take my work all too seriously. Now I know that I do, but if I tell myself that I do, it will make it a lot more stressful for me. If I tell myself it is what it is, everything's going to work out, then I can manage my own expectations a lot better, because I don't have any expectations. So find things outside of the artwork that regulate your moods. So for me, that's daily walks in nature with Charlie, or just taking Charlie out. Sometimes it's just sitting on the sofa for an hour, just like having just with Charlie, or watching some TV, or just doing things that keep me very, very sort of grounded, watching some YouTube maybe, or listening to a good podcast or an audiobook. I absolutely love audiobooks. I don't know what it is about them, but sometimes I can be really, really despondent if I'm sat on the sofa and I'm like, oh, I can't be bothered, or I need to go and clean the house, and the idea of that is just so overwhelming. I think it's maybe because I live alone as well, but sometimes doing those day-to-day like mundane tasks which seem really, really overwhelming, sometimes I will just put an audiobook on, a non-fiction audiobook, and all of a sudden just having that noise and having that almost comfort in my ear just really helps me get going. So find things that regulate yourself and keep you motivated. So again, I like to go to the gym. I tend to go like 3-4 times a week. I tend to run a couple of times a week. I really, really like baking. I am quite good-ish now with my nutrition when it comes to the gym. So I find a lot of joy in like cooking and meal prep and making sure that I know what I'm going to be eating for the week ahead. So again, I can kind of plan things so I don't have that decision fatigue when it comes to things, that my life can kind of just flow day to day, and I can kind of I don't notice those severe ups and downs, because again, I've kind of put things in place to benefit my future self and over the next like week. Seeing friends and family is another good one. Just having people around you that really regulate and calm your nervous system, the people who you can go and talk to when things get hard and things get tough. Obviously, I have my therapist who I speak to every week for an hour, and it doesn't always need to be about anything other than anything that deep. Sometimes I can just say I'm really, really stressed about work, and it is super nice, and I've always said, and I will continue to say, how grateful and how fortunate I am to be in a position that I can have therapy. And because I don't have that many people around me who will ask or have concerns or even want to know about the work that I do, even like this podcast, or there's sometimes when I watch things back in terms of this podcast, or I'll be putting a clip together for Instagram, and I will think to myself, like, I've actually done okay with this. And not even with the podcast, but just having zero idea what I was doing, and just doing tiny little things on a day-to-day basis, which has just led me to different ideas and different opportunities. And I sit here not having any formal education or anything like that, and somehow I made something out of nothing basically, and that's very cool. And sometimes you really have to remind yourself how far you've come. I look back at I think the last paycheck I got from an employed person, well, when I was employed or from an employment place, was when I was like 22. So that was 8 years ago now. So for 8 years, I've regulated my own income, and found my own income through the work that I put out there. And sometimes you really just have to sit there and think, I've actually done okay. And it's not an egotistical thing, it's not an arrogant thing, but you really need to celebrate those wins and celebrate those successes, and be your own cheerleader, because no one else cares as much as you do, and no one cares as much about you as you do. And so sometimes people can't relate to the things that you do and the things that you're achieving. So you really do need to acknowledge your own successes, and just do things that make you feel happy at the end of the day. So again, find people around you who you can talk to about your work or things that you're excited about, and have the right people who are your cheerleaders, and who can not just the right people, the people that don't deter you, the people that don't tell you can't do things. Just find the people that, even if they don't understand it, that are like, that's a great idea and I will support you. And even if it's from a distance, you know that they are the people who've got your back. So when it comes to routine, there's a couple of things that I tend to do if I'm feeling really stuck or I feel really overwhelmed. There are certain different things that I do that really help me, and I hope they help you too. So one of the things that I really like to do if I feel really, really overwhelmed is I like to time block. So I will literally write from 6 a.m. to midnight in hour chunks, so 6, 7, 8, 9, etc. down on a sheet of paper. Or you can get diaries with it in, or you can do it on your phone or an iPad. I'm sure there's many apps out there for time blocking. And I will set myself tasks to do within that hour. So even if it's like clean the house, I'll give myself an hour to clean the house, and then I'll give myself 2 hours to get my admin done, or I want to draw for 4 hours. And if I structure my day, I suddenly feel like I've achieved so much more, rather than it's the days when I haven't really got anything in place and I just wake up and I'm like, okay, I've got a full day of drawing today, which is what I love, but it gets to the end of the day and I'm like, don't feel like I've actually achieved that much because all I've done is sat here. Whereas if I incorporate just those little extra tasks, whether it's like half an hour of even taking Charlie out for a nice walk, or doing some baking, or just doing something that again is away from the artwork that I enjoy doing, that helps regulate it, helps regulate my mood. So therefore when I come back to the artwork, I can be like, oh, this is really nice again, rather than feeling really stressed that I'm not achieving as much as I would like to achieve. The other thing that I like to do is create priority lists. So if I feel really overwhelmed and I've got a lot of things that I need to do, then I'll write it all down and I'll section it into what's really, really important that I need to get done that day, and actually what can wait. And a lot of the time, we can overthink things and things can become a lot in our head, but when it's down on paper, all of a sudden it doesn't seem that much. And then when you separate it into things that are really, really important that you need to get done, then all of a sudden you know your next step and life doesn't seem that overwhelming, or not as overwhelming anyway. So when we're creatives, our routines aren't going to look the same each day. You're not going to do your Monday to Friday. I tend to, or up until recently, I was working pretty much 7 days a week. I would have my more adulting day, as I called it, on a Saturday, where I went and did a food shop and took Charlie for a nice walk, and then I had the podcast record day on a Sunday. But recently I have swapped that, and I've now been doing the podcast, this record, on a Saturday. Just so on a Sunday I have a complete day off, apart from the odd bit of admin that I've need to do in the evening sometimes. But it's been, for the last couple of weeks, it's been really, really nice to swap the routines around, and actually have like a whole day off. But I think a lot of the time when we're creative, we tend to work 7 days a week and we don't realize how much we are working, because it's all doesn't seem like work. It doesn't feel like work. Even if we're checking social media, again, technically we're working, but it doesn't feel like we're actually doing any work. And sometimes drawing definitely doesn't feel like work. But you end up doing a lot, and you don't get a break. And even though it doesn't feel like work, you're still doing something on a day-to-day basis to do with your business, and that's absolutely fine. However, it becomes really, if you're anything like me, I get really, really tetchy when I have to take a day away from it, or 2 days away from it. If I'm going to go away, or I've got a holiday planned or anything like that, I get really anxious. And I was speaking to another artist friend of mine about this the other day, because she's just about to go away for a week. And she was like, oh, I'm really, really stressed about leaving the business for a time. And I was like, I can completely understand, because when you give your life to something and then all of a sudden you're forced to have that break and you're literally away from everything, that's really, really stressful. Because I think when we run our own businesses and it's something that's super, super close to us, we can become quite controlling over it. And I'm definitely very controlling over this business and my routine and the things that I do on a day-to-day basis and that. So actually not having that in place, it can feel really, really like anxiety inducing. So again, it's about doing these self-regulating tasks that keep you saying, or keep the saying going in my head, you're safe, you're fine, you're safe, you're fine, and nothing's going to happen. And I think if you repeat those, it's like those daily affirmations, if you keep repeating those sort of things to yourself, you're okay, nothing's going to happen. It sounds silly, but I promise you it does help. If your brain is anything like mine, and you get really, really stressed about things, you do have to remind yourself and keep telling yourself you're safe. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And if something bad does happen, it's fine. It's an opportunity to learn. So again, flip the narrative. There's always a positive to be taken from things. So yeah, your routines don't need to be the same each day, but as long as you're doing small daily tasks to benefit you in the long run. So whether, like, for example, away from the work, I like to meal prep, or I make these like protein oat cookie things about twice a week, which is my breakfast. So I have make my coffee in the morning, I have one of those. And I know it's a good source of fiber, it's a good source of protein, it's got some different like vitamin, it's got everything I need for the morning, and it's prepped, it's ready to go. I don't have to think about it. So it's, when I talk about doing things to benefit your future self, it's to stop the decision fatigue in the future, so you know what you're doing, so you can focus on actually what's important to you in that present moment and be a lot more present without stressing about things in the future. Now, I just want to caveat here by saying that I know I'm in a fortunate position in some aspects by the fact that I live alone, I don't have children and everything like that. But obviously, and what I mean by that is obviously I don't have routine around other people. I can very much go to the beat of my own drum. But then on the other side of that becomes the extreme loneliness of not having anyone to regulate my life apart from myself. So maybe that's an episode for another day about actually the loneliness. I think we already covered an episode to do with that, but I think talking about different routines and how to be alone with this business is maybe that's something we can cover. So yeah, just do try and incorporate small daily tasks that benefit you in the long run, and also factor in little rewards too. So just literally something to look forward to, so your brain starts to associate that task or completing different things with a little reward. Now that could be like, I don't know, taking your dog for a walk and getting a coffee once a week out instead of making one at home. But if you know that you've achieved those things and it gets to Wednesday, that's what I used to do on a Wednesday. I used to have therapy and it was always quite stressful. So I used to go and if I'd achieved, or if I ticked some things off my list that morning, then when I took Charlie out, I'd go and get a coffee, and that would be my like little reward, or hot chocolate or something, just as something to just say, you know what, you got through that, well done. And your brain literally starts to associate things with like rewards, and the rewards you give yourself with doing something. So, and you need to kind of cling on to that feeling, and your brain will literally, it will start associating those things. And even when we talk about building a business from the ground up, so talking about being a commission-based artist, and when I first started, I was charging £20. Now, I remember putting the work out there, receiving that £20 and thinking, oh my goodness, wow, this is insane. So your brain starts to associate the reward of doing the work and obviously receiving something back. And then obviously with that, I could afford to buy more pencils, and I could afford to do this or that or whatever. So again, obviously that's a monetary transaction, but you need to almost like cling on to those feelings that your brain gives you, those little dopamine hits when you do a task and you reward yourself, because it will encourage you to keep going. So yeah, it doesn't need to be anything major, and I would recommend it not being anything major, because again, we want to keep things sustainable. The little things that you enjoy on a day-to-day basis, just make sure you are incorporating those things into your life aside from being creative and doing the actual drawing, because as I keep saying, it will help you regulate your artwork and your business a lot better. I've written on my notes here that I wanted to talk about how I kind of got to this point where, again, I talk a lot about detachment and within this business, and obviously anyone who knows me knows how I care an extreme amount about what I do. However, in my head I don't, because the more attached I get to something, the more chance that I will get attached to an idea, and that's when things don't work out or things go wrong. And I feel like, looking back at the years that I've been running this business, from being on antidepressants to living with my parents to feeling super isolated to going through horrendous relationships to obviously bringing Charlie home to buying this property, and to then again being in a very, very like psychologically or emotionally damaging relationship. When that all ended about 18 months ago, I had to grow up really, really, really fast. Now I feel like I've changed a lot in the past 18 months to 2 years. So living alone has forced me to grow up very, very fast, and feeling so alone throughout that really toxic relationship and also the aftermath of that and being back in therapy, I had to focus on building micro habits to get me out of bed each day. And to start off with, it's so bloody hard. It's so hard, but just making those tiny life choices to be 1% better each day can make the biggest difference to your future. So as I said, when I was really, really struggling to get out of bed, I knew that I didn't really earn any money for about 2-3 months. I couldn't. I was just completely not in a good way. And I needed to really, really build myself back up. Now, I feel like my brain either goes to do different places. It either goes, you're going to work really, really hard and you're going to really prove other people wrong, or it goes, you need to rest and you need to recover from this trauma that's happened. And I've experienced both things in the last 2 years, from being really severely triggered to start something new with the creative business guide, to then feeling like I'd lost myself completely, and then having to be almost completely at rock bottom and actually not being able to get out of bed and not knowing how to feel better. And again, it was really, really, really slow. And for me, it actually started with cooking. I taught myself to cook. My skin had flared up so badly. I had eczema all over the bottom of my face. I had it all under my arms. It was red, it was raw, it was inflamed, it was bleeding. It was horrendous. I was so self-conscious. I didn't want to leave the house, and I started obviously doing a lot of research, and I was researching about foods and different food groups, and actually trying to heal myself from the inside out rather than going to the doctors, because if you're in the UK, you know how incredibly difficult it is to get a GP appointment now. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to try and heal this myself. And it forced me to learn to cook, which is something that I obviously could do a little bit of cooking, but I wasn't very good at it. So I focused on that, and I didn't focus on work, and I focused on making myself better, and I managed to clear my skin up. I managed to heal that, and I managed to in turn start to feel a little bit more productive each day by just knowing that I was going to have a really nutritious meal. I was going to have my smoothie. I knew what I was going to be eating. I was documenting a lot on Instagram. I wasn't posting anything about work. I was literally just posting about my food. If you remember this, if you follow my Instagram, you'll know this was about this time last year. I was documenting a lot of my salads and things like that, just because I was trying to heal and trying to give myself a focus and a purpose just to get out of bed each day. And in time, when you take the focus, I took the focus away from the business, and I focused on making myself feel better. And as soon as I started feeling better, I naturally wanted to gravitate back towards the artwork. And it's those little micro habits that allow us to take a step forward each day. And sometimes when we are at the bottom of the mountain and we're at the start of our journey and we don't know how we're going to get to the top, we don't know how we're going to do it, it's those tiny little things that you do on a day-to-day basis which really, really help benefit your future self and benefit you and your mindset. And again, I think the difficulty is now that we live in a world where we expect to see instant results, and we expect to see instant things overnight, but it rarely happens. And we need to keep ourselves regulated and kind of detach from the outcome of being at the top of the mountain. And as I always say, it's enjoying the journey, enjoying the process. And I know a lot of you want me to talk about money and finances and income streams and things like that, but it's so difficult because everything looks so different to each one of us. And I obviously, when I talk about the journey, I'm not talking about getting to a certain point financially or anything like that, because you know your budget, you know how much money you need to earn from your artwork, know what you need to do. I just want to help give you guys the tools and to tell you stories and give you a little bit of knowledge and advice about actually knowing that you'll get there. But it's about staying that consistency. It's about having that consistency and staying in routine and finding the routines that work for you. Whether it's you really like drawing at night and it calms you down, you can do that. And you get the softbox lights and you can work at night. I know loads of artists that tend to stay up until 1 or 2 a.m. and drawing, or they start work at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, I know my brain can't work like that. I can't work in the evenings. That's my gym time. That's my socialising. That's the time when I see my friends and my family and my mates at the gym, or, you know, whatever. So again, you'll find your routine. You'll find the way things that work for you. And the more you learn about yourself, the more you grow, and the more you develop within your creative field and the creative business and everything you want to do with that, then you will find what works for you. But as I keep saying, just try to find things that regulate your nervous system away from the artwork, because then it allows you to be a lot more playful almost and curious about exploring things with the artwork. You don't become so attached to the outcome, and when we practice the art of detachment, then things tend to work out a little bit better, and you don't experience the extreme highs and lows, and you can stay a lot more consistent with it. Whenever I've experienced massive highs and lows, it's when I drop and go really, really low. That's when I can't do the artwork for a while. Whereas if I have got other things in place that help regulate myself, it allows me to keep coming back to the drawing pretty much every single day. And again, it's that consistency, as I always say, that is key. And it's posting and showing up and doing one thing that's hard every single day to push yourself out your comfort zone. Growth and being comfortable they don't coincide at all. You need to, even if you just do one thing on a daily basis that just pushes you slightly outside your comfort zone, whether it's posting on social media, whether it's talking in your stories, whether it's, you know, posting a reel for the first time, it's those little micro things that you do which are really, really difficult at the time, that they become your new normality, they become your new norm, and in time you will build things, and you'll look back, as I have done, as I sit there with this podcast, I look back over 8 years and I go, oh my god, this is crazy, and it's exciting, because again, you don't have to have all the answers, but you just need to take the first step. So and also, yeah, just stay consistent. So I really hope you've enjoyed that little like pep talk episode. I hope next week I will feel a little bit better. I feel it is a lot easier sometimes to not be on camera, because I can just sit here and feel a little bit slobby and just not feel myself, but it means I can have a very, very candid conversation and actually just chat about things. And yeah, I know that these episodes are getting really, really well received. I'm so grateful, and I really hope they are helping. I really, really hope they're helping. Again, all feedback, anything you want me to talk about. As I keep saying, I know so many of you want me to talk about finances. It's just so hard. I don't know how to do it, because everyone's business and everyone's marketing and everyone's ability and everyone's skill set and the way you are is so different. And what works for one person isn't going to work for another person. I could go and tell you to do X, Y, and Z, but if your brain doesn't operate like that, or it is really, really difficult. Anyway, I'm not going to dwell on that. If there is topics or mindset things or anything you want me to talk about, then yeah, as always, just send me a message or let me know in the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. Routines are incredibly important. So just factor that into and start building those little daily micro habits. And speaking of micro habits, I am gonna go and make a coffee now, because that is my reward for after a podcast record. I'm gonna go and sit on the sofa for half an hour, give Charlie all the cuddles, because as I said, I'm really not feeling myself at the moment. I'm feeling very, very I'm not in a bad way. I'm not in a bad place at all. I'm in a very, very good mental space at the moment. I'm really good mental space. I feel really quite happy at the moment, but sometimes I just don't feel good in myself, and that's completely different to my mindset. I'm very happy and content, but I just don't feel good in myself. So that's that. Not going to dwell on it. Hopefully next week, and with another good night's sleep, hopefully I'll start feeling a little bit better. But I hope you are doing well. I hope you're okay wherever you are in the world. I have just finished a Rhodesian Ridgeback graphite drawing, which I'm really excited to launch as a masterclass. I absolutely bloody love drawing graphite, and I'm looking at it now and I'm really, really I love it. I love how it's turned out. I'm really, really proud of it. So that will be on social media, and I'm going to try and step outside my comfort zone a little bit and create some reels and a bit more content around it, because I've been slacking massively with my social media game. Recently I've been very much in my head about it, very much overthinking it. So I need to take my own advice sometimes, which is easier said than done. I think a lot of us are good at giving advice and very bad at taking it or giving it to ourselves. So I'm going to try and put myself out there a little bit more over the next week when I start feeling a bit better. But thank you so much for being here. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will speak to you guys next week. As always, take care, and sending you so much love. Bye.